the man returned to Earth. The very first thing he did before the destruction was to pour all his resources into repairing a damaged calligraphy brush. And only he knew that this brush was a legendary double S-tier item, capable of granting him the hidden martial saint physique. The timeline shifted back to an earlier point. A game called BattleNet quickly became a global sensation. At the beginning, it's nothing more than an ordinary game. But the emergence of the Space Alliance changed everything. The game turned into reality. If someone dies in the game, they will lose their life in the real world as well. Moreover, countries with lower rankings will be destroyed by monsters. It has essentially become a battle for survival. Now, there are only 10 countries left on Earth. They are about to face their final moment of life and death, because they need to fend off the invasion of apocalyptic monsters. Yet when faced with such powerful creatures, even with a large number of players joining the fight, they still appear insignificant in front of the monsters, seeming as small as ants in comparison. With just a single strike, the entire team could be wiped out in an instant. However, the appearance of one man changed the tide of the battle. He gathered all his power into the palm of his hand, then unleashed a full-force strike toward the monster. A violent tremor followed immediately. A notification of successful defense echoed ahead, and he was a man known to everyone as the martial saint, Shang Jihan. Although he achieved victory at the cost of losing an arm, the credit was taken by the blonde uncle, the president of the top guild in Country Inn, and the world's #1 ranked player, Baron Williams. At the same time, the Saintess hurriedly began treating the man, even though defeating the monster alone was an extraordinary feat. But as the president, how could he tolerate his subordinates stealing the spotlight? So he called on his teammates and took all the rewards from this boss battle for himself. Even though the rest of the team was extremely dissatisfied with this, they had no choice but to accept it. After all, he is now humanity's last hope. And the president also explained why he wouldn't share the rewards with the man. Because he wasn't from the southern country. Clearly, the man had grown completely accustomed to it, even though he possessed 3S level skills and was even ranked 7th in the world. He was ignored and discriminated against because he wasn't a citizen of Country Inn, which led to all kinds of neglect and prejudice towards him. However, compared to all of this, what tormented him the most was that he was now the only person left from Country H. Just as the man's arm was about to recover, a notification came from ahead announcing the mission's completion. The defense of Country M was successful. The defense of Country Z was successful. The other 8 countries ended in failure. However, the victory condition requires more than half of the players to survive. It is clear that humanity has lost. Now humanity is at a critical moment of life and death. They must defeat Uruk to have any hope of survival. Upon hearing this, the Saintess immediately suggested it to the guild leader. If the situation involves Uruk, then assistance from the letter is necessary. After all, it was thanks to him that the monster was defeated last time. But before he could finish speaking, the guild leader had already decided who would handle it. As a flash of white light appeared, a massive Uruk suddenly came into view, standing clearly before everyone. At the same time, the guild leader instantly unleashed all of his power. Immediately, a surge of thunderous energy surrounded him. But just as he charged fiercely at the monster, in the next moment, a shadow flashed by. Soon after, news of the guild leader's death came through. Upon hearing this, everyone was thrown into a state of panic. In no time at all of humanity was wiped out completely. As the monster's massive axe came crashing down, the notification of game over appeared ahead. Humans were categorized as a worthless species. The Space Alliance made the decision to eliminate humanity. Soon, black matter began to appear around humans, and then instantly consumed them. The world eventually faced its destruction. Even the men thought the same way. But in the very next moment, an error message came from the front. One human was still alive. It was the man's unnamed divine skill that resisted being erased. Even the Space Alliance was incredibly surprised by this. If he had known the true name of the unnamed divine skill earlier, then the destruction of Country H could have been avoided, and he would have been able to protect the people who mattered most to him. At the same time, the gods of the Space Alliance became interested in the man, and after a vote, they granted the man another chance to take on the challenge. As his vision blurred, when the man opened his eyes again, he was shocked to find himself back at the start of the game. It seemed like a great opportunity if he could make good use of the experience from his previous life and apply the lessons he had learned. Then he could definitely change the future. Changing the future wasn't the only goal. This time he was determined to protect everything, because he had witnessed the world falling into ruin with his own eyes. But now he was back again. When the Space Alliance first emerged, the H-Nation remained remarkably steady. In the global player rankings, there were 11 individuals considered the strongest, and ranked third among them was a player from the H-Nation, the Sword King, Yoon Se-jin. H-Nation maintained its unshakable status, thanks to his presence. But one day, the Sword King suddenly announced that he would join the Star Guard of the Stubborn Nation. This was the most shocking news in the history of Country H, and it just so happened that the man returned on this very day. In his memory, ever since the Sword King left, the ranking of Country H on the Battle Network plummeted. Because of the Sword King's departure, Country H eventually faced destruction, and this guy turned out to be his brother-in-law. He couldn't understand why his sister fell in love with someone like that. If his sister were still alive, would things have turned out differently? But now is not the time to dwell on such thoughts. At present, his stats are embarrassingly low. Yet, this is completely understandable. After all, the man had been wasting his life away before, because he had no idea just how powerful this talent truly is. In this world, all humans who reach the age of 18 become players, but only a very small number of humans are able to awaken their innate abilities. When his talent was rated as the lowest grade F, he started living a life of idleness and wasting time. Back then, he had no idea the true value of this skill could only be revealed after awakening. But now he feels extremely puzzled why his attribute value is only at level 1. Yet it shows that he is at level 2. And then he suddenly remembered. It seems like he accidentally consumed experience points, which is probably why he leveled up. But what is this? Why is there a score of 100,000 performance points? He doesn't recall doing anything extraordinary to achieve this. Could it be that returning caused some kind of change? At that moment, the performance points exchange voucher nearby caught his attention. He was able to unlock the performance store. It seemed as if it was a special tool exclusively for men, so he decisively decided to use it. The next moment, he saw the performance store appear right in front of him. It looked like it was designed to add tools by upgrading the store level. To add more tools, then he upgraded the store to level 4. And in the next moment, a notification came from ahead suggesting an urgent fix for the project. It can restore incomplete items back to their original state. At this moment, the man could no longer hide his excitement. Afterwards, he headed straight into the game room, although this was something left behind by the Sword King. Thanks to him, the man now has the chance to fully enjoy himself for once. Right after that, he took out the very first item he owned, the damaged calligraphy brush, with the man using an emergency repair. The next moment, the damaged calligraphy brush was successfully fixed. Now, the preparations were complete. The double S-level item, Dongfeng Shua's brush. At the same time, the beginner tutorial of the Jiang and Bronze League was about to begin. Looking at the little time left, so the man immediately called up the status window. Then he began writing on the window. In the past, there was a reason why he was called the Saint of Martial Arts. This pen has the ability to combine all attributes in a combat power. Only by using this pen to write those 2 words, he could gain the legendary martial saint physique. As a surge of immense power began to gather slowly, the attributes displayed on the window kept fluctuating. At the same time, the countdown for the match ended. In the next moment, he was teleported into the battle network. This time the objective is to survive. Survive against the monsters in the arena and other players. Make it out alive. When only half of the players remain, the survival battle will automatically come to an end. Could it really be the Colosseum? At this moment, though, he cared more about whether he had obtained the martial saint physique. After carefully checking for a while, the man finally breathed a sigh of relief. And he not only gained the martial saint physique, he even achieved unique skill accomplishments. The performance increased by 10,000. It seems he's meeting an old friend again. And this is just the beginning of mastering the nameless divine skill. However, as long as he has this, he can easily pass this competition. At that moment, a notification popped up from the window. The man did not use a connector to play the game. Skipping the use of a connector will lead to suffering in the game. Then it suddenly occurred to him. The connector left behind by the Sword King is a high-end product that can reduce 99% of the pain. However, there's no need to use something like that right now. At the same time, a limited mission prompt appeared ahead. During the beginner tutorial, earn first place to get a reward of 1,000 performance points. As long as you possess the martial saint physique, then he would be able to achieve it effortlessly. As the game begins, a shadow quickly flashed behind him, just when he thought he had taken the man down. In the next moment, he froze in place, because the man blocked him with just 2 fingers. Now, it was his turn to make a move. The scene shifts. Time rewinds to before Doohy Kuei launched his attack. At this moment, he is getting ready to shine brightly in the competition. After all, it's the Jiangnan Bronze League. It's where the stars of various guilds gather. It's their first time taking the stage. A guild is a place for nurturing and managing players. They have the ability to develop strong players early in the league. They manage to nurture powerful players right from the start of the season. He is affiliated with a 2-star guild. It is a guild directly operated by a 2-star corporation. He is already renowned worldwide for having many rising stars. After Du Hakue obtained the first-level agility talent, he joined the guild. In this world, only a very small number of people can acquire exceptional talents, so he has a high chance of making it into the top 50. Among this group of contestants, he immediately noticed the man in the white tank top, who clearly stood out from the rest of the participants. So he launched an attack on him without hesitation. However, he never expected this. The man surprisingly blocked it with just 2 fingers, effortlessly stopping it in its tracks. Keep in mind, this was the ultimate speed of agility. Then the man casually flicked it away. Do you really think this little talent is enough to join this competition? But he looked completely stunned. Are you seriously disregarding my A-level talent? Of course, the man firmly confirmed it. Hearing this, he immediately unleashed his full power. The next moment, a figure suddenly appeared right in front of the man, but the man shifted sideways to avoid it. The strike came along with a series of follow-up attacks, each of which the man skillfully dodged, although his speed was noticeably faster than the man's. The man, with his past life experience, had already been through countless battles of various scales, and his attack patterns were far too predictable. The man could even anticipate his movements. As he swung with all his might at the man effortlessly knocked the sword out of his hand with a single strike, and then caught him in one fluid motion. Immediately after, he pierced him on the spot with a single thrust of his sword, though he claimed he wouldn't let the man go next time. Only the man knew there would be no next time. As the player vanished into thin air, the sword in the man's hand gradually faded away. Now that the warm-up was over, if he wanted to claim first place, you need to take down more than 5 players. Just as expected, nobody would choose monsters as their opponents. In the online network, aside from players, there are also monsters, but only by defeating 10 monsters. Is it roughly equivalent to defeating 1 player? So most players at the beginning would only choose players as their opponents, especially monsters like the Uruk that travel in packs. Nobody would willingly choose them as opponents. It was at this moment a new task came from the front to eliminate the Uruk horde. Killing 30 monsters would reward 500 performance points. Even though this task seemed like a thankless effort, the reward for this was surprisingly 5 times that of killing humans. Since that's the case, there's no reason to turn down this task. After all, monsters are just monsters. Compared to the real Uruk, it doesn't even come close. Well then, let's give it a shot. With the man quickly closing in on the monsters, the Uruks also began to launch their attacks on the man. At the same time, 2 axes came flying straight toward the man. but he effortlessly caught them in stride. That's how an axe should be thrown. The moment the axe was thrown, it instantly took down two monsters. As the monsters displayed expressions of utter shock, the man had already moved swiftly behind them, with a swing of the battle axe in his hand. The next moment, the heads of numerous monsters were severed in silence. At this point, the mission progress had reached 1/6. It was at this moment the monsters launched an attack on the man all at once. But with just a single turn, he instantly slaughtered the surrounding monsters. At the same time, a long spear shot straight toward the man, but the man broke it in half on the spot. This scene, even the nearby beastman found it hard to believe, and while he was momentarily stunned, the man swung his massive axe toward the beastman. Yet, in the very next second, the massive axe unexpectedly snapped apart on the spot. Seeing this sight, the other beastmen seized the opportunity. They swarmed toward the man, but the man remained calm and composed. Suddenly, he pushed off the ground with immense force. In the next moment, the ground around him burst apart. He then leapt into the air and grabbed his sword. Right after, a figure flashed past. In just a short moment, the man completed the task of eliminating the orcs. He then earned 500 performance points, and his level was immediately upgraded. Generally speaking, the experience points are usually calculated after the game ends. Even men can't quite figure out what's going on with this, but being able to improve attributes is always a good thing. So he decided to increase his strength stat. Strength is a unique attribute that combines all other strength-related stats. This allowed him to perform at a level twice as capable as the average person. And what's even more important is, when a strength stat reaches 30, he had the ability to unlock the nameless divine skill. However, in the man's memory, martial power isn't something that can be easily improved. He needs to constantly gain combat experience and train to be able to enhance it. But now it can be improved so effortlessly. If things continue to progress in this way, that would truly be amazing. At that moment, an arrow shot straight toward the man. The man dodged it by turning sideways. It seems like the two have started working together. This kind of thing happens here quite often, and that emblem belongs to the Turtle Guild, one of the top 10 guilds in Country H. It looks like they both belong to the same guild. At the same time, there are now about 60 players left. The game is about to come to an end. I never expected there would be so few people left now. If he manages to avoid this attack, then he can make it through this match. Right as the two were casually chatting, the man checked the score. Even though the man only took down 4 targets, he was still holding the #1 spot. Seems like the top position is secured for now. As the woman was about to launch an attack on the man, a figure suddenly flashed by. In an instant, the woman was killed on the spot. This is a perfect chance to test the strength of 6 points in combat. At this moment, the warrior nearby trembled in fear at the sight, and in the next second, the man swiftly moved behind him, then swung with all his might, slashing directly at his back. But he didn't expect his armor to be so tough. Afterward, the man kept hacking furiously at one spot. As the number of strikes kept increasing, the armor shattered into pieces in response. Just a mere B-grade armor. How could it possibly withstand me? Right after the man broke through the enemy's armor. At this moment, 2 people were in front of the screen, watching his every move. Even the head of the HR department, Li Haiyan, was completely surprised by this, and the fact that he didn't descend beside Lin Jiaying truly turned out to be a blessing. Otherwise, it seems even the second-place finish in the competition wouldn't be secure. However, the captain is quite curious. If you face him in the next match, do you think you could defeat him? Even though he mentioned he would try to avoid men, the captain, wanting to gather more information about him, ordered him to confront directly, and he stared at the man on the screen, lost in thought. Sheng Jihan seemed to have seen him somewhere before. Lin Jiaying is renowned for her S-level talent. She is the rising star carefully promoted by the Divergent Guild. He was supposed to make a name for himself in the Jiangnan Bronze League, but unexpectedly, the appearance of a man changed everything. Everyone found this situation hard to comprehend. Why would a second-tier contestant possess such extraordinary strength? Who exactly is he? The scene shifts. The Jiangnan Bronze League has already come to an end. The experience points gained from the match boosted him from level 3 all the way to level 6. Then the man allocated 3 attribute points, all of which he added to his strength stat. At the same time, the man received a new title, known as the Dominator, which grants 1 point to all attributes in a Bronze League and increases experience gained from matches by 20%, although it only applies to the Bronze League. But it seems like the attributes are quite decent. With the attribute boost provided by the title, the man's strength level reached 10 points. When the strength level hits 10 points, he can easily clear the Bronze League, and the Silver upgrade battle will unlock after reaching level 25. Therefore, you only need to focus on the Bronze League. At that moment, something suddenly came to his mind. This refers to the process of changing classes. When a player's level reaches 5, they can choose to acquire a basic class. Changing classes is a pivotal moment for players without a class. It grants them access to class-specific skills. There are 4 types of classes: Warrior, Archer, Mage, and Healer. In his previous life, the man chose to become a warrior. If the man chooses to become a warrior again, he will be able to grow and develop more quickly. However, the advent of the performance shop gave men an additional option, allowing them to try out different professions, and then, at critical moments, spend 10,000 performance points to add a new profession slot. This way, warrior would no longer be the top career choice, and the job to pick this time would be this one. The scene shifts. We arrive at the Jiangnan Bronze League. This time, the mission is to defend, protect the crystal, and survive the wave of corpses. The battle will continue until only 5 towers are left. At that moment, 2 streaks of blue light suddenly appear. One of them is an archer from the LK Guild, and the other is a mage with decent gear, but no guild. Now, only the most essential profession remains: the healer. Defensive tasks are a war of attrition. That's why the healer's support abilities are incredibly crucial. But in the next moment, Lin Jiaying froze in place, because a familiar face appeared before his eyes. It was actually Sheng Jihan. This must be the defense battle, right? And just 20 minutes earlier, the man had chosen the healer profession. Even though the prompt indicated that the profession didn't match the user, he still decisively pressed confirm. And the only reason he chose the healer role was one thing. When picking a support role, it unlocks the skill Holy Power, which is an essential element for obtaining another unique attribute. But that unique attribute is harder to develop, since it cannot be improved through practice. Instead, it requires a significant amount of performance points. But right now, performance points can only be applied to the nameless divine skill. However, the man quickly came up with a solution to this issue. He came up with an extremely reliable method. At the same time, the magician could be seen loudly voicing his complaints. He thought the man's shabby armor was absolutely unworthy of being compared to his own expensive gear in the same team, even though the archer tried hard to persuade him to stop talking. But he completely ignored the gesture. Right at that moment, the man was seen lifting it up on the spot, then forcefully throwing it out of the tower. Since he had no interest in playing, then just stop playing. Even without you, we can still live just fine. Right after the man threw her out of the tower, at this moment, she no longer carried her previous arrogance. Right now, she is begging the man to let her go. She is willing to do anything for this. The person kneeling is named Jing Guiha. Her change in attitude actually has a reason behind it, because in this competition, each participant is given 3 lives in total. But right from the start, he lost 1 life because of the man's actions. Later, during a conflict with the man, he ended up losing his 2nd life. Now he is left with only 1 life remaining. If he dies one more time, he will end up at the bottom in this competition. To avoid finishing in last place, she begged the man to spare her, because the last place will face the punishment of being downgraded. If that happens, the expensive skills she spent a fortune on would completely vanish without a trace. When the level doesn't match the skills, the skill will be automatically removed. At this moment, the man suddenly remembered. He seemed to be quite good at fire magic. Naturally, because fire magic is very effective against monsters. And right now, he is a level 15 mage. So he is absolutely certain the man wouldn't easily give up such a valuable resource. Meanwhile, Lin Jiaying was lost in thought. Where exactly had she seen him before? Then she recalled that this person was named Jin Guihe. He was once a member of the top 10 guilds. He was a magician everyone had high hopes for, but he failed 4 times in the Silver Advancement Tournament. From then on, he started causing trouble everywhere he went. Eventually, he ended up as a failure. It was at this moment, the golden turtle and the crane suddenly made an offer to the man. If the man apologized to him, then he would agree to cooperate with everyone. For a moment, the surroundings fell completely silent, and the very next second, a familiar move once again caught everyone's attention, actually daring to make me apologize. Then the man was seen throwing it into the air with one swift motion. Immediately following, he struck it and sent it flying. The magician outside the tower, Jin Guihe, was defeated. The scene shifted. The magician nearby was casting fire magic. Just as Jin Guihe had mentioned, fire is highly effective against monsters. Everyone found themselves in a dilemma at this moment, and they criticized the man, saying he shouldn't have done that. Meanwhile, the man was busy checking his own window. Limited time mission. Get first place in a mission to earn a reward of 1,000 performance points. There is also a related mission available. Kill 1,000 zombies alone to earn a reward of 3,000 performance points. But with the limited time available, it's simply impossible to complete the task. Yet the man didn't want to give up on those 3,000 performance points, and so he fell into deep thought. At this moment, Lin Jiaying had already been observing the man for quite some time. She thought the man was nothing more than a self-centered guy, just a person who only cared about himself. The Analyst Guild had no reason to investigate him at all. Right then, the blonde-haired guy beside him snapped the man back to reality. If this keeps going on like this, you might as well fight on your own. Am I capable of doing all this? The man was lost in thought at this moment. Maybe it should be possible to achieve that. Meanwhile, Lin Jiaying expressed her opinion. The therapist remained positioned at the back. He was assigned a role of the frontline fighter, but the man insisted there was no need for that. He claimed he could take on the role of the frontline himself, and all he needed to do was to protect the archer. Just at that moment, a massive blood corpse suddenly appeared before everyone. Just as the two were getting ready for battle, the man had already raised the long stick in his hand. In the next moment, a powerful thrust instantly killed the target on the spot. Even the two of them were utterly shocked by this. This turned out to be the Holy Flame. Could this be divine power? At the same time, a horde of zombies was seen rushing straight toward the man, but the man dealt with them all in just a flash. Even though he wasn't sure if he could pull it off, he figured it was worth a try. Task progress, 6 out of 1,000. At that moment, the man suddenly exerted all his strength, and in the next second, he charged straight into the horde of corpses. He could then be seen swinging the long staff in his hand, and swiftly weaving through the swarm of the undead. In no time at all, he had already taken down 26 zombies, while the blood zombies were immune to physical attacks. Only when encountering him, the man would unleash some divine power and take him down with a single strike. Seeing this scene, even the blonde guy nearby turned into his devoted admirer. Yet only Lin Jiaying was utterly shocked, because the man could not only precisely control the release of divine power, but more importantly, every single attack he made was aimed right at the monster's head. At that very moment, the mission was 1/5 complete, and this just happened to meet the conditions for upgrading his divine power. Right after that came the notification about the man enhancing his divine power. It seemed like his guess was correct. This turned out to be another way to upgrade divine power, and also how to properly utilize divine power. The relic, when it first appeared, carried an air of mystery that kept driving its price higher and higher. But after a decade, humans ultimately failed to uncover its hidden value. Eventually, it became completely worthless. However, the man learned from Sophia's words that relics have the ability to enhance the user's divine power, though this is only applicable during competitions. And the reason he could become a saint was due to his long-term practice of holding the relic while praying, in order to gain divine power through this process. However, the conditions for using each relic are different, and he realized someone had been collecting these relics all along. At this moment, the man suddenly remembered that he might know who that person was. When he first returned, the man had once gone to the Sword King's attic to investigate, and he was completely shocked because the ground was covered with relics that had already lost their power. That's right, the one who had been collecting those relics all along was none other than his sister. The older sister once fought side by side with the Sword King. She was regarded as the most outstanding hero. But all of that happened while she was still alive. At the same time, the man noticed a lever nearby, a sacred artifact of extraordinary level. It absorbs divine power by striking the heads of evildoers. And it was through this artifact that the man enhanced his own divine strength. However, now there's barely any divine power left to absorb, but using it to fend off monsters is still pretty effective. Meanwhile, Lin Jiaying on the side looked absolutely stunned, because in his understanding, this kind of action can't be executed using a keyboard. At the same time, the blonde guy next to them suggested whether they should help those people. Just then, a zombie lunged straight at the blonde guy. In the next moment, a dazzling figure flashed by. The monster was killed on the spot. At that moment, the man couldn't shake the feeling that he looked very familiar. The Plum Blossom Sword, Lin Jiaying, though he had the potential to become the next Sword King. Unfortunately, he ultimately met his end at the hands of Yun Si-jin. Then he turned to the man and extended an invitation. If they teamed up now, their ranking could reach an even higher position. After reviewing the score situation for a moment, so the man agreed to his request. All right, I'll leave this to you. Then the man leapt from the tall tower. Now time to unleash a big move. Shortly after, a window notification appeared. The special mission was completed, but just as expected, the related task was only halfway done. And then he realized perhaps his strength wasn't quite enough yet. When they become stronger in the future, they will come back here and try again. But no one knows whether this task will appear again. Meanwhile, Lin Jiaying stood there in utter disbelief. A mere healer who is even lower ranked than him was actually able to achieve this level. Could it be that there's a glitch? At that moment, the blonde-haired man beside him decided to quit the game. The man should also go back to claim his reward. But Lin Jiaying suddenly called out to stop him. The strength the man displayed in these two competitions convinced him that he was exactly the talent the Divergent Guild needed. So he asked him for his number, but he quickly realized he was being too abrupt. After all, who asked for someone's number right after meeting them? But the man responded to him by saying, if it's about business matters, he had absolutely no interest in that. And now he had long forgotten his own number. If he could run into him again next time, then the man would tell him. After that, he turned around and left the place. It was only then that Lin Jiaying snapped out of it. Was he just rejected? The scene shifts. At this moment, the man was slowly walking down the street. And no matter what, he just couldn't recall his own number. But was he just admitted? Although the man could get his number first. It seems like the guild is drawing too much attention. And, for now, he has no intention of joining the guild. Then he checked his status window. He leveled up by 2 levels, gained 1,500 GP points. Even though boosting divine power is pretty good, this little GP is nowhere near enough to buy any relics. It looks like I'll need to search through my sister's house again. The scene shifts. The man returned home, but the pair of shoes in front of him instantly brought back countless memories for him. Everyone has experienced moments of regret in their life. Each of us has had times we wish we could take back. And the man's biggest regret was not being able to protect her. In their previous life, the two had depended on each other to survive. Even though he spent his days drinking, he never gave up on her. Instead, he kept encouraging her to stay strong. But he failed to protect her properly. That day became the moment she regretted the most in her life. And now he saw her again. It's been a while. Uncle. Yun Se-ah was the daughter of his sister and the Sword King. I didn't expect you to return from your trip so soon. But he said he was the only one who ended the trip early. After all, ever since his father joined the New Guard in Japan, his uncle was the only family he had left. So he was really worried about his uncle. But hasn't your father contacted you? He has, though. But he only told Yun Se one thing. and that was that he had fallen in love. For this, he was willing to abandon the entire H country, and even his own daughter. Hearing this, the man immediately felt extremely angry, but he quickly calmed himself down afterward. After all, that's just the kind of irresponsible guy he is. The scene shifts. At this moment, the two of them are chatting casually. And Li Haiyan believes Sheng Jihan is someone the Union must recruit. Right at that moment, the phone notification on the side caught his attention. Afterward, they suddenly noticed the live stream appearing right in front of them. At that moment, the two of them were utterly shocked, because the person hosting the live stream turned out to be Sheng Jihan. At the same time, he boldly announced to the viewers that the Sword King is actually his sister. Then, he slowly lifted his right foot. The next moment, he suddenly exerted full force. In an instant, the ground cracked open. At this moment, the man was staring intently at the symbol of the Sword King, as everyone was feeling utterly shocked by this. By now, he had already raised his fist. With just one strike, he completely destroyed the massive twin sword statue. Next, he would reveal his stance on the Sword King's induction into the Star Guard ceremony. And there's actually a reason behind his actions. Because the Battle Network is home to the world's largest media. By getting clicks and attention from the audience, it's possible to earn plenty of achievement rewards. And as the Sword King's brother-in-law, he could undoubtedly take all the rewards, along with the notifications of achievements being completed. Just as expected, Yoon Se-jin also had moments where he could be useful. At the same time, a familiar black dual sword emblem caught his eye. This is the emblem of the Sword King family. They are all die-hard fans of Sword King Yoon Se-jin. Back when the Sword King left Country H, they turned their rage towards Seiya, believing it was his mistakes. That drove the Sword King away. If he were to die, then the Sword King would definitely return here. In the end, Seiya met a tragic death at their hands. If you wish for one to appear, someone to vent your anger on, well, I'm more than willing to be that person. Right after that, the man shattered the statue behind him with a single punch. The Sword King will never return. The man pulled a phone out of his pocket. Let me play it for you. Ever since he joined the Star Guardians, the last call he had with his daughter, just as the man said, Yoon Se-jin abandoned the entire nation of H just for a woman, and even his own daughter. Then, Yoon Se-ah began her speech. Hello everyone. My name is Yoon Se-ah. I am the daughter of Sword King Yoon Se-jin. Although the Sword King left this palace to her, she couldn't bring herself to accept it, the property left behind by someone like him. So she decided to donate it to the nation, and hopes the country will take this opportunity to nurture and develop more outstanding players. Details about this, she will explain it later. Just 30 minutes ago, Yoon Se-ah looked completely puzzled at this moment. He couldn't understand why a man would give away everything that's so hard-earned and donate it all, even though the man found it hard to explain. Only he truly understood. After Yoon Se-jin joined Japan, he helped Japan destroy H country. This stirred up anger among all the people of H country. So, the country began confiscating all of Yoon Se-jin's assets. This left Yoon Se-ah homeless and wandering the streets, with nowhere to go. She was even threatened by the Sword King's family. In the end, she lost her life, since it was inevitable that she would lose everything here. Why not gain people's support in the name of donation? This would also serve as a form of protection for Yoon Se-ah, even though he didn't understand why the man wanted to do this. In the end, he still chose to trust his uncle, because he felt that his confident uncle was back. Just as expected, the Sword King family began to target the man. But to make sure nothing went wrong, he decided to start explaining again. Yoon Se-jin believed I did the right thing. Even though on the surface, it seems like you did this because of a woman. Only I know the truth. You fled to the giant nation, simply because you were afraid of failing in Country H. Yoon Se-jin, you're already outdated. Now that you're staying in the giant nation, you might as well enjoy the rest of your days, because I will be seeing you very soon, and I will destroy everything you have. Right after the man issued his warning to the Sword King. At this moment, Yoon Se-ah had a worried look on her face, because the man's statement caused a global sensation. But more than that, she was curious why the man seemed like a completely different person all of a sudden. After all, he had already experienced death once. So how could he possibly be the same as before? Right at that moment, the sound of the doorbell ringing nearby caught their attention. Who could it possibly be at a time like this? Meanwhile, over on the other side, the Sword King had already learned everything that had happened. The scene shifts to show an older man coming to visit, and the visitor turns out to be the manager of the Battle Network department, Park Yoon-shik. Ever since the Sword King left, he had been taking great care of the two. It was clear the man had long anticipated his arrival, so he signaled for him to speak his mind directly. There's no need to beat around the bush. You came here this time because you want me to withdraw the donation to Sword King's palace, right? After all, if the nation accepts this donation, then it would be the same as admitting that the Sword King won't return. Even the old man didn't expect that the man in front of him would undergo such a drastic change. And just as the man said, they haven't completely given up on the Sword King yet. And because of this, he suggested that men consider using a delegated management approach. This means transferring ownership to someone else for management. The condition is that once the Sword King returns, the ownership will be transferred back to his name. If they can continue living here together, that would be even better. Right after that, he handed the man a contract. Only in this way can both parties achieve a win-win situation. The man also expressed his full understanding of them. However, before confirming, he had to agree to one condition set by the man. The scene shifts. At this moment, the arena was already packed with a noisy crowd. And right at this time, a figure appeared before everyone, landing gracefully on the ground in a dazzling manner. He was none other than the streamer Radiant Gold. Despite everything, he was loved by many in the audience. However, his behavior was absolutely appalling. Despite being at the golden level, he willingly lowered his own ranking and entered the Bronze League, using his overwhelming strength to toy with the bronze-level contestants. When he was about to decide on his first victim, suddenly, Shang Jihan appeared right before him. He had already been very curious about him, so he approached him for an interview. But the man never paid any attention to him. Instead, he started checking his own status window. At that moment, a notification popped up on his window. The Sword King family issued a bounty. The mission was to eliminate Saint Jihan with a reward of 2,000 GP. Yet, the golden streak of light showed no reaction. So the Sword King family kept increasing the bounty amount. Eventually, he accepted the mission at a price of 50,000 GP. All right, I'll take it from here. Then his legs gathered strength. In the next moment, he swiftly moved behind the man. At that exact moment, the man turned around and swung a club. The immense force instantly knocked the sword out of his hand. Right after, he pulled out a dagger from his chest pocket. In the blink of an eye, a figure darted past and immediately struck him down. The player Shang Jihan claimed the first kill. Achievement reward, 100 achievement points. It seems like the cooking skills have slightly declined. Although the golden streak of light was slashed by the man with a single sword, the very next moment, he was revived once again. The Resurrection Cross can bring a user back to life one time, but it cannot be used in the national tournament. And when he made a grand reappearance, at this moment, the man had already moved behind him, as a slash descended with force. Shang Jihan successfully secured a double kill. And it's been a long time since anyone has used this item, because it has a fatal flaw. But on the other hand, today is likely to be a busy day. After all, it's an official match, so there will be spectators coming to watch. And this time the audience consists of the elves. Their presence deeply disgusts the man, because they accelerated the downfall of the human race. Although the man wants to deal with them immediately. But right now, the immediate problems in front of us must be solved first. He slowly glanced toward the crowd. In the next second, everyone scattered in fear, because he was an existence even more terrifying than a golden streak of light, staring at the two sacred relics in his hands. To earn more tasks and rewards, he had no choice but to keep fighting. At that moment, a task suddenly appeared ahead. Eliminate all the goblins present. The goblins over there. This is exactly what I wanted. The scene shifts. The man suddenly moves in a flash. He launches a sudden attack on the goblins. In the next moment, the goblin takes a direct hit. Then a shadow swiftly streaks by. The goblin is instantly slain on the spot. At this very moment, a notification has come in indicating a reaction from the relic. It seems he already knows how to use them. By striking the enemy's head with a stick, then attacking the enemy's heart with a short dagger. Even though learning how to use the relics is still quite useful, it's clear the man has wasted too much time. But the situation isn't over yet. Suddenly, the Goblin King appears before the man, and in the next moment, the man struck him with a single blow, knocking him unconscious on the ground. He then raised a short knife in his hand and aimed directly at his heart with a swing, successfully taking down the Goblin King, earning 500 achievement points as a reward. The man obtained the Dark God's cooking set of divine power. His rank dropped from D level to E level. Although his level decreased, the man could still draw divine power from it. However, securing victory in this match was still the goal. He also needs to focus on the players. Since they are unwilling to come closer to me, then I will be the one to approach them. At the same time, the Golden Light at this moment is in a furious rage, because the audience is currently discussing. He seems as useless as trash, but only he is aware. Things are far from being as simple as they imagine, because a goblin's combat power is at least above 35, but the man could easily take it down. While the Bronze League's ability value is capped at around 25, the man was undoubtedly a black tiger. It was at this moment, screams could be heard coming from the screen, and in the next moment, the golden streak of light froze in place, because the competition was showing a completely one-sided situation. Players were being taken down at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bi Sheng Xiong. In no time, the man swiftly eliminated all the contestants in front of him. At this moment, the relic's level dropped from level 1 to F level. Killing 10 people in the arena grants a reward of 5,000 achievement points. Although he gained a significant amount of achievement points and divine power, it was far from enough for the man. Right then, a task appeared in front of him. An epic level mission. Find the Shadow Queen in the arena and provoke her. Who would have thought such a thing would happen in the Bronze League? An epic quest unexpectedly showed up. The reward for completing the quest is 50,000 achievement points. One important note is that the constellation seems to have a strong interest in the Shadow Queen. Constellations hold a sacred status in the Battle.net universe. If they complete the tasks assigned to them, then they can gain a unique ability from it. However, this only happens in the Diamond League matches, where such tasks may appear. Since the opportunity has now presented itself to the man, then there's no way he would let this opportunity slip by. If he can get one zodiac sign on his side, then the other zodiac signs might also take an interest in him. But among so many elves, can he find a Shadow Queen? Right after the man single-handedly secured first place in this round, the major media outlets began scrambling to cover the story. This happened after Yoon Se-jin's departure. A record was set for the first time. In an instant, he gained a huge following. Those who were once fans of the Sword King all became supporters of the man. Meanwhile, the golden streak of light became the target of everyone's criticism. His reputation kept getting worse and worse, but he didn't seem to care about it at all, because he had also become a devoted fan of Shang Jihan, and he dreamed of becoming his dedicated editor. At the same time, the two of them are chatting casually at the moment. They are debating whether to accept sponsorship from others. Meanwhile, the man has fallen into deep thought. Although this epic-level task seems relatively straightforward, finding him in a crowd is no easy feat. This is undoubtedly harder than climbing a mountain. Just then, she asked the man if he needed any help, because whenever things don't go smoothly, Uncle always has this same expression. Then the man was seen telling him about the mission. He needs to find the Shadow Queen in the Colosseum. The only thing known is that he is in the audience section. The other men are completely unaware of anything else, although the clues are limited. He plans to search for him through the replay. I'll leave it to you then. The scene shifts. The man is seen returning to his room. Then he opens his status window. It's time to carry out this operation. At a new profession slot, the man will earn achievement points. Bought a profession slot. This way, he can add a new profession. The profession chosen this time will be a mage. As the man pressed the confirm button, a surge of purple energy instantly enveloped him. The next moment, he could feel an energy distinct from divine power, flowing through the heart. This time, his choice of the mage class was deliberate, because only by having both a healer and a mage, these two classes together, could he unlock the unique hidden attribute, which is strength. And all this information came from Baron. Before his return, Baron often, after getting drunk, would confide his thoughts to the man. What he takes the most pride in is possessing a unique attribute, and that attribute is strength. Strength is created when divine power and magic combine, resulting in a unique attribute unlike any other. Of course, no one else but him can master it, because he is the only human with two professions, and strength contains the power to manipulate space. Even though in the past, Baron was the only human with the power, things are different now, because the man will become the second to master the power. Even though Baron's control over the power is extremely poor, yet he managed to secure the top spot in the world solely because of this unique trait. And with this, he firmly established himself as #1 globally. To change the fate of Earth's destruction, the man must gain control of this power no matter what. For this, he has to endure the pain of the process, gathering divine power and magic in his hands at the same time. At that moment, a red energy orb was slowly forming in the man's hands. Just as he thought he had succeeded, in the next second, a powerful force instantly sent him flying dozens of meters away. And during his very first experiment, he had already used up all the magic he had, but there was nothing else he could do about it. Keep bringing the two energies together in your hands. And at this moment, he suddenly thought of something. Even if he couldn't gather both energies at the same time, what if he combined them inside his body instead? Starting with the divine power in the upper dantian, mixing it with the magic power lingering in the middle dantian, and finally stabilizing it with the strength from the lower dantian. This would form the initial state of the force. The only thing left would be to compress it. At that moment, a surge of red energy burst out from within him. He was trying to unify the three energy centers. The warning exceeded what the player could handle. His life was under threat. At the same time, Sia seemed to sense something unusual. She quickly ran toward her uncle's room. The failure to unify the energy centers was actually expected, although the man once attempted to forcibly unify it. But the conditions for merging the dantian are extremely strict. He not only needs to master the use of 3 different types of energy, but also ensure that the values reach at least 100 or higher. If he rashly tries to unify them, it could potentially cost him his life. Right at that moment, Shia suddenly pushed open the man's door, and when he asked why she screamed, she brushed it off by claiming she had a headache. However, he was very scared, afraid that something might happen to her uncle. But after confirming that her uncle was fine, she stated that she would continue searching for the Shadow Queen. Then she turned around and left the place. It seems the unification of the 3 dantians was clearly a failure, due to his lack of experience and level. But this was not a big problem. After all, he gained the power he desired, even though he couldn't unify the 3 dantians. But he combined divine power with magic, using this to gain strength. The bond connecting the 3 forces was incredibly fragile. It was at this moment the man noticed something unusual. Why is the initial value of strength set at 12? At this point, a notification appeared in the window. The values of physical strength and strength are shared. If that's the case, then only one attribute needs to be increased. Another attribute will also increase along with it. This is absolutely amazing. It's just the combination of 2 abilities, and it already has such an effect. If 3 abilities were combined, who knows how much of an improvement it would bring. But for him right now, it's clear that this is still beyond his reach. However, since he's already obtained the desired attributes, it's about time to try using magic. But it's pretty obvious. It seems like he forgot that he currently has no magic at all. The scene shifts. At this moment, the man is waking up from his sleep. After absorbing throughout the night, the man's divine power has increased to 10 points. As of now, he can no longer absorb sacred objects below sea level. Meanwhile, Seiya has been struggling through the night. Finally found a clue about the Shadow Queen. Someone used their vision ability. They discovered some new species and captured them on camera before uploading online. The footage showed a dark elf caught the attention of the two, and this individual currently has the highest likelihood of being the Shadow Queen. Although some new information was uncovered, the man believed the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. Immediately afterward, Shia expressed her thoughts about it. He mentioned that he would continue organizing this information tomorrow. Even the man praised his level of expertise. However, as he looked at the shattered photo frame nearby, the man fell into deep thought, because just 2 days ago, they discovered some crucial information. The new woman in Sword King's life is named Shueha. She possesses an S-Class level of talent. She is an incredibly beautiful woman. Are you suggesting that the Sword King was captivated by this woman's talent? It's certainly not impossible to rule out this possibility. Afterward, the older man warned him to be cautious of this woman, because they suspected her talent might be related to mental manipulation. After all, before the Sword King, there are many rising stars. A sudden situation occurred where many joined the giant nation. If this ability had no usage limit, then he would definitely confuse powerful players once again. And from that day on, the man had been investigating information about the water crane, but he found nothing. If everything the uncle said was true, then he must be fully prepared, because they might have already started taking action. Right after the man decided to prepare in advance for the giant nation, the scene shifts. Today marks the auction event of the former Sword King. At this moment, the two of them are dressed formally and heading to the event. Meanwhile, Shia appears to be extremely nervous, but the man signals to her not to worry too much. Just like the last live stream, show your true self. We haven't done anything wrong. There's absolutely no need to care about what others think. A moment later, they arrived at the venue. It was at that moment the man nearby called out to them. He said everything was ready. The man could now start the auction. However, he found this quite surprising, since he hadn't expected it either. The terms the man proposed turned out to be hosting an auction for the Sword King. And now he finally realized the man's true intention. It was all to lure Juk Nation here. That's right. From the very beginning, the man's goal was this Sword King, Yoon Sejin's personal connector, as well as all his combat data. These are exactly what Juk Nation wants to obtain, and Juk Nation will stop at nothing to get their hands on it. Based on the current information, it's certain that Yoon Sejin will not appear on the scene. Therefore, this is a great chance for people to face reality. Even the man standing nearby was completely shocked. No one expected the man to change so drastically. This is their last opportunity to alter their statements. Because of this, the man reminded him carefully. Make sure to have the reporters pay closer attention to the position of the Star Guard. At that very moment, a heated argument could be heard not far away, and Seiya instantly recognized it. These are his aunt and uncles, even though they tried their best to dissuade Shia from auctioning off the Sword King's belongings. He immediately saw through their intentions. They just wanted to take advantage of the Sword King's reputation to make a huge profit for themselves, and they had absolutely no right to interfere with Shia's actions. Then he turned around and walked into the auction. The scene shifted. The two had just stepped into the auction hall, was immediately met with a flurry of camera flashes from the reporters, while he just casually raised his finger. In the next instant, all the cameras suddenly seemed to shatter simultaneously. At the same moment, the man stood on the stage and began his speech. The auction was about to commence, and 3 items had been prepared for this auction. The first is a special connector exclusively used by Yoon Sejin, which can minimize in-game pain by 99%, as well as the combat data included within. Next, Yoon Sejin analyzed her own data. Finally, it was the research data on top players from other countries. At this moment, everyone started discussing fervently. It seemed they weren't willing to let go of anything. After all, data on top-level players is not something that can be easily obtained. Just then, a single right hand was seen slowly rising. He is Kazuo Takeda from a new guard of Wakoku. He expressed his willingness to spend 5 billion to buy everything here and gain a chance to speak privately with Yoon Seiya. But his offer was turned down by the man. If there's anything important, just say it here directly. After all, the current atmosphere isn't suited for private conversations. At this moment, he appeared slightly hesitant. If you keep showing hostility, that could be extremely dangerous. He is a bodyguard known as Shadow. Although he can't compare to the Sword King, he is still an exceptionally skilled player. But the man only felt deeply curious. Is this guy trying to imitate Yoon Se-jin? Just as Shadow pointed his sword at the man, the next moment, a punch came straight at him, knocking him into utter confusion on the spot. Right as he was about to draw his blade to attack, the man raised his hand to stop him. After all, this is a live broadcast for the entire world. You probably wouldn't want to casually use a long sword in front of everyone. At the same time, Takeda Kazuo, standing nearby, apologized to the man. However, there's one thing he must make clear in advance, and that is the 5 billion he spent on everything included a private conversation with Yoon Seiya, and he needed to know how Yoon Seiya felt about it. After all, the heir to the Sword King's fortune is him. Therefore, the host of this auction should actually be Yoon Seiya, and the topic of this discussion is related to the Sword King. This kind of offer is something no one could possibly turn down. However, Seiya outright refused on the spot. After all, he has no interest at all in news about his father. Moreover, he believes it's better to just follow his uncle's advice. Even though he was turned down, though a bit disappointed, he was still willing to spend 5 billion to purchase everything here. Then he pulled out an envelope from his pocket. It was the final letter Sword King wrote to Yoon Seiya. Gazing at the letter from the Sword King, Seiya found herself deep in thought at that moment. At the same time, Takeda Kazuo was urging the man to quickly sign the contract. Yet the man found himself caught in a dilemma. Before his return, Kazuo Takeda was a person banned from entering country in. He was prohibited from entering the country. This was because he was highly skilled at attracting players from other countries. As a result, people referred to him as the disaster of the giant nation. He might also have some connection to Mizukaku. That's why men need to stay vigilant. But the current situation looks a bit grim. If the Sword King's belongings are taken by the giant nation like this, it will surely cause widespread dissatisfaction. At that very moment, Shia's speech captured everyone's attention. The Sword King heard that he had donated to the Sword King Palace, even though he had no idea why Shia did it. That was the very last of his possessions left behind for him. Because of this, he hoped Shia could make good use of it. Additionally, their bond as father and daughter would end here. There would be no further contact from now on. It seems like this is indeed his notebook. Meanwhile, the man fell into deep thought. That woman's abilities must be genuine. Even though the man strongly dislikes Yoon Se-jin, at the very least, he is a dependable and responsible father. Someone like him, how could he possibly abandon his own daughter, just for the sake of a woman? Then, Seiya tore the letter into pieces right on the spot, and instructed Takeda Kazuo to relay the message. He expressed great delight over severing the father-daughter relationship, while he was struggling to figure out what to do with the torn pieces. The man raised his hand and instantly gathered the shredded paper in the air. As the man clenched his fist tightly, in the very next moment, a burst of flames consumed it entirely on the spot. Everyone was utterly stunned by this, because he not only possessed the skills of a warrior, but also wielded both magical powers and divine strength. Even Takeda Kazuo, standing nearby, was visibly thrilled by what he saw. This guy must be the talent that the nation of giants needs. And in the very next moment, the crowd suddenly swarmed toward the man. Everyone hoped the man would join their guild. While he stood there completely at a loss, Sia suddenly collapsed to the ground. What on earth is going on? As he anxiously asked her what was wrong, she revealed that she was merely pretending. This would help her uncle get away from the crowd. After confirming that Sia was truly fine, it was only then that he finally breathed a sigh of relief. After that, he announced to everyone, since his niece was feeling unwell, the auction house would be concluding for the day. Right after that, He helped Shia and began heading toward the door. At that moment, Takeda Kazuo approached him and apologized, hoping he would give him a chance to have a proper conversation with him. But in the next moment, the card in his hand suddenly shattered into pieces, and that was his answer. At this moment, however, Kazuo Takeda was filled with excitement, because he was certain the power the man just used was incredibly strong. Even though he is just a bronze-level player now, in the near future, he will undoubtedly become the most powerful being. The scene shifts, with Seiya's assistance. The two quickly manage to escape from the venue. At that moment, a notification came from ahead. Kazuo Takeda donated 10,000 GP points. Who would have thought he actually donated 10,000 GP points? This guy just won't leave them alone. At the same time, a voice called out to stop them. It was Li Haiyan and Li Jiaying, walking straight toward them. Then he began introducing himself to the man. He introduced himself as Li Hai, the head of the HR department at the Divergent Guild. Li Haiyan mentioned how pleased he was to meet the man, but the man couldn't shake the feeling that Li Haiyan looked very familiar, whether it was his mannerisms or his air of confidence. Everything about him gave the man a sense of déjà vu. It was at this moment Li Haiyan made an unintentional gesture. The man was instantly stunned and froze on the spot. He definitely knew this person. Immediately, the man started murmuring. When the world is filled with potential, it becomes nearly impossible to ignore him. This is a quote from Dostoevsky, a profound saying by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Although he was a great writer, he was famously known as a gambler. And you seem to like this quote. Isn't that right? At this moment, Li Jiaying suddenly stepped in front of him. Then she loudly questioned him about how he could possibly know. It seems like the young lady's motto was guess correctly. In his previous life, he was none other than Baron Williams' Agent Zero, even though he was always heavily addicted to alcohol. Because of his unique talent, he managed to rise to become the president of the Second Guild, developing what was originally only useful for experienced buffs. But as the beginner's tutorial came to an end, the range of the skill's effect expanded, until it spread across all areas. Among all players with the talent to develop, Zero stood out as the strongest. From the Plum Blossom Sword to Zero, it seems that the Divergent Guild is truly powerful. At the same time, Li Haiyan gave a light cough twice. Let's put an end to the jokes here. Right after that, he extended an invitation to the man. The Divergent Union needs talented people like you. How about finding a time to have a detailed discussion? It seems like someone is finally willing to take Uncle in. At this moment, Li Haiyan was immersed in the joy of success. Pay attention, Jiaying. That's exactly how she controls men. But the next second, the man said he had already forgotten the number. In an instant, everyone was frozen in place, completely stunned. Meanwhile, Sia on the side thought that her uncle was just playing hard to get, so she decided to go along with him. It seemed like the niece wasn't feeling well, so he decided to leave first. But he could take a business card, and if needed, he would reach out to him. Then he turned around and left the place. Meanwhile, Li Jiaying was trembling uncontrollably at this moment. Trying to hold back her laughter was proving to be incredibly difficult. Not long after the auction event had ended, the man found himself once again at the John and Bronze League. This time, the task was to defend. However, he appeared to be utterly exhausted at this point. This was because Sia mistakenly thought the man had feelings for Li Haiyan. She even believed she had ruined everything. Although that wasn't actually the case, the man didn't know how to explain it to her. Even he never expected this to happen. To meet Zero again in such a way. Before his comeback, he was a true gambler in every sense of the word. And because they shared the same experience, that's why their relationship has grown much closer. And as a result, they've become significantly more connected. Even though he enjoys spending his free time placing quite a few bets on soccer games. Up until now, he still hasn't won a single match. He never evaluates players based on their talent. The scar on his face, however, caught the man's curiosity. Has he really never thought about getting it removed? He confirmed this without hesitation. After all, it was the price of making a deal with the devil. Then he turned to the man and asked, why is it that he's only gotten stronger now? If the man had been this powerful back then, The fall of Country H could have been avoided, and his friends wouldn't have lost their lives because of it. Setting aside the fact that both of them are from Country H, there are still many similarities between the two. One of them is not being able to protect the person who matter the most, which led to a deep sense of guilt and the disgust toward his own cowardice. Meanwhile, at the same time, the netizens seemed to notice something a little different about the man, because he was tightly gripping a massive sword in his hand, a C-Class holy sword, the Uruk stone Jar's warblade. However, due to its extreme weight, it ends up being very inexpensive, but for men, it doesn't seem to matter much. As the man swung it around a few times, he quickly got used to its weight. At that moment, the online audience started to stir. They said they wanted to see the man's status window. As the number of subscriptions keeps increasing, this kind of demand is likely to become very common in the future. However, the man has not yet achieved the subscription-related milestone, so he made a decision. Once the number of subscriptions reaches 200,000, he will reveal his status window or meet another condition. If he fails to secure first place in future competitions, then he will immediately reveal his status window on the spot. At the same time, 3 beams of blue light suddenly descended right next to the man. The man, however, looked completely astonished at this moment. Why would the 3 of them appear together? A golden streak of light and an unknown mage, along with Diego Macide. It was the first time the man had ever seen him in person. Before his return, he had been a top-tier player, but the man noticed something unusual about him. Since he is a healer, and there are already warriors and mages here, then he must be the archer. But he clearly remembers, before returning, he was a mage. So why has he become like this now? At the same time, the mage nearby already harbored deep hatred toward the man because of what happened earlier, which caused him to lose a highly valuable skill. At this moment, he received a notification on the window. The Sword King family issued a mission: destroy the crystal, prevent Shang Jihan from taking first place. Reward of 50,000 GP. At this time, the signal for the competition to begin had been given. Mace was seen kicking the soccer ball first, starting the attack. At the same time, he gestured toward the man. Please provide them with a buff that enhances their abilities. Although he couldn't use it before due to insufficient divine power, but now he can manage it with ease. As he cast the spell with his chant, everyone's stats were boosted. At that moment, the man turned to the mage and asked, "Are you going to enjoy the game properly this time?" Of course, after all, ignoring a man's words will end up being thrown under the tower. All right, I'll leave this to you guys then. Then the man leaped off the tall tower, just as everyone was feeling deeply puzzled about this. At this moment, the mage could no longer hold back his inner rage. This time, he was determined to see how long he could last. Meanwhile, faced with a large number of enemies before him, the man immediately cast a fire spell. After all, this is magic awakened with the power attribute. So even when facing this group of enemies, it's absolutely no challenge at all, as a surge of magical energy poured out. In an instant, all the enemies were engulfed in blue flames right on the spot. Right after that, the man swung the massive sword in his hand down toward the ground. In the next moment, the enemies in front of him were completely obliterated. Even the people present found it hard to believe. Who exactly is Shang Jihan? Right at that moment, they saw a blood-soaked corpse lunging straight at the man. But then he froze in place, unable to move. Just as expected, the power to control space is incredibly strong. The absolute domain. Anything that enters the domain, their movements will be completely controlled by the user. Even though others are unaware of this power, the man is quite familiar with it, because Baron Williams often trains with him. During their training sessions, the man gradually came to understand the power's abilities. Then, the man wrapped flames around the massive sword, and with great force, swung it forward. In an instant, an incredibly fierce blue flame swept across the entire land. He possesses 3 distinct attributes. In the Bronze League, he has already become an unbeatable force. This time, he is determined to achieve the feat of slaying 1,000 enemies. The task, amidst the crowd of monsters, a figure darted back and forth. At this moment, the man's eyes were solely fixed on completing the mission. Even the two onlookers nearby appeared genuinely astonished. This guy is unbelievably strong. And at that moment, some netizens noticed. Golden Turtle Crane seemed a bit off, so they signaled the golden streak of light to focus the camera on him. But the next second, he froze in place, because Golden Turtle Crane was using fire magic, slowly walking toward the crystal. Then he started shouting angrily at the man, not only mocking him for being parentless, even pulling Sia down along with it. The man could no longer keep his composure this time. Is this guy asking for death? When he returned and saw Sia again for the first time, the man was reminded of those unbearable memories. In the final moment before Sia's death, to hide the harm caused to her by the Sword King family, her body was wrapped in bandages as she collapsed into the man's arms. However, at that moment, her body had already lost all warmth. This was the man's greatest regret in life, but he found himself powerless to change it. So when he returned once more, he made up his mind. This kind of thing would never happen again, because he would protect everything about Sia. When he gained the power attribute, he noticed something unusual. It was that he could use the nameless divine skill. However, since his combat power hadn't reached 30 yet, he could only imitate it. However, when he focused his strength, he truly felt a sensation similar to the nameless divine skill. At the same time, the man instantly entered the right state. At this moment, he was imagining an electric current starting from his feet. In the next moment, countless streams of electricity burst out from around him. And at this point, he transformed into lightning. This is the step that can shatter the sky. Flashtander Raibu. Just as Golden Turtle Crane was about to destroy the crystal, a golden streak of light appeared and stopped it all, although he signaled not to interfere. But in order to gain more subscribers, the golden streak of light declared that he was definitely getting involved. And in the next moment, Golden Turtle Crane could be seen, already forming an enormous fireball, then aimed it directly at the crystal ahead. At this critical moment, a soccer ball blocked his attack. It turned out to be Diego Marcito. He strongly dislikes actions that disrupt the game. He even despises people who insult their teammates. So he had to stop what Jean Gueja was doing. Hearing this, Jean Gueja immediately felt furious. But the next second, the man had already moved swiftly behind him. Looks like you have a lot to say. At this moment, she was already scared out of her wits. But when she tried to speak, she realized she couldn't make a sound no matter what, because the man had already covered her mouth. Initially, the man intended to carry her away right then and there, but he changed his mind. After all, the connector could significantly reduce the pain. Even if someone falls in battle, it's just a matter of losing a level. This is common knowledge everyone is familiar with. But starting now, the man was about to show her a completely different world. Then he reached out his right hand toward the Golden Turtle and Crane. At this moment, the Golden Turtle and Crane had already lost all its abilities. Even though he didn't want to lower his level because of this, it seemed like he had somehow managed to irritate the man. In the next second, a wave of intense pain instantly filled his entire body, leaving him unable to speak from the pain right then and there. Why are you already crying out? In pain, I haven't even started yet. At this moment, the Golden Turtle Crane has already fallen into endless pain. But generally speaking, using a connector to fight usually doesn't cause such a strong reaction. At this time, Mazid reminded him to pay attention to what the man was holding. He had been treating the Golden Turtle Crane all along. Could be a side effect. To put it simply, this feels just like a bug, while being in an abnormal state. If treatment continues under these conditions, it will trigger an overload reaction. When an overload occurs, the body bypasses the connector and takes 100% of the damage. He was really curious how exactly the man managed to pull it off. Bonne dislocation technique. Only a handful of martial arts experts can achieve this, channeling one's own energy into the enemy's body to achieve the effect of tearing muscles and shattering bones. At this moment, the Golden Turtle Crane still couldn't figure out why the connector had failed, was slain by the man with a single strike in the next moment. Shortly after, news of the golden turtle crane's death came through. Meanwhile, the man glanced toward the nearby resurrection point. Even the golden streak of light. Everyone was stunned and didn't know what to do next. The scene suddenly shifted. A familiar sight appeared in front of everyone again. But this time, he didn't even have a chance to beg for mercy. News of his defeat came from ahead. It seems like more adjustments to the strength are needed next time. In the blink of an eye, the golden turtle crane came back to life again. At that moment, the man was slowly walking toward him. Guys like you need to take responsibility for your actions. Pay the necessary price. At that very moment, a sound came from ahead. She had donated 10,000 GP to the man as a tip. At this moment, he hoped his uncle would stop pushing things too far. After all, the most important thing right now is the competition. After a brief period of thought, the man decided to end his punishment here. However, he wanted to know who gave him the courage to do this. At this moment, the golden turtle and crane were already so scared that they were completely at a loss. So they ended up revealing everything without holding back. It was a person known as the Sword King, a mission issued by someone from the 898 family. To complete the task of destroying the crystal, one could receive a reward of 50,000 GP. But the man just thought it was extremely odd. After all, for a normal person, it's impossible to spend 50,000 GP to issue a mission. So it's highly likely he is part of a group. Then the man suddenly grabbed hold of Golden Turtle Crane. You really should express your gratitude. Exactly, it saved you from all those punishments. Right after that, he threw it out of the tall tower. Player Golden Turtle Crane has been defeated. Golden Turtle Crane has been eliminated from this match. Next, the man would need to focus on completing his mission. After all, if this hadn't happened, the man would probably have finished the task by now. And when he checked his status window, only to realize the task was already completed, could have been caused by that lightning strike. The lightning generated while leaping wiped out all the nearby enemies completely. It seems to be a power beyond his control that led to all of this. Ultimately, what he used wasn't the nameless divine skill. This is truly embarrassing. It seems more practice is definitely needed. Afterward, the man expressed his gratitude to Mazid. He was deeply grateful to Mazid for protecting the crystal, and mentioned that he would surely repay this favor someday. However, for now there were some things he needed to discuss with him in private. But just at that moment, a violent tremor shook the entire competition arena. As the man was feeling puzzled by this, a gigantic hand suddenly appeared right before their eyes. Everyone present at that moment could sense an ominous aura radiating from the massive hand. As the monster let out a series of roars, this creature was actually devouring zombies. At the same time, the monster spat out several clumps of mud from its mouth. In the next moment, new monsters emerged from the mud. It was only then that the golden streak of light realized. This was clearly a monster that only appeared in the Golden League. It had the ability to disassemble flesh and reassemble it into a new creature. This was none other than the Flesh Golem. But why would he show up here? Could it be because of a special mission? A special mission. The origin of the zombies, too, without the help of crystals. Clearing out the Flesh Golem. Just as the man looked puzzled. At this moment, a notification came from ahead. You have completed the task of defending 10 towers. An additional task has been added to stop the Flesh Golem. Meanwhile, the crowd nearby was utterly shocked by this. Who would have thought an extra mission would show up in the Bronze League? Stop the Destroyer. The army of Flesh Golems created by Blackhand. Use the Blessing of the Crystal. It can help narrow the power gap between you and your enemies. You're not seriously thinking about completing this mission, are you? Keep in mind that these guys are extremely tricky in the Gold League. They're all incredibly tough to deal with. Even though the mission seems impossible to accomplish, the man still wants to give it a shot. After all, aside from achievement points, there are even additional rewards. When this kind of situation arises, it is enough to indicate this is at least an epic-level quest. While everyone was discussing how to deal with these monsters, the man gestured for them not to take action. Then he slowly walked toward the monsters with a holy sword in hand. The flesh demon seemed like a monster with an immortal body. Its core must be destroyed to kill it. However, because of his massive size and his tough outer shell, it makes him very difficult to take down. What's more, he's a gold-level monster. At the same time, the man muttered softly for the two to step aside. In the next moment, the man darted toward the monster with lightning speed. By the time they realized what had happened, all that was left on the ground was a deep mark. Footsteps echoed as the man slowly raised the holy sword in his hand. The fundamental technique of the nameless divine skill. The 3 elements and 5 levels. Heaven, earth, and humanity are the core elements that make up the nameless divine skill. Using this as the foundation, it carries the momentum of Mount Tai crashing down. At this moment, a slash descended, instantly delivering a fatal blow. The player even managed to defeat the meat golem. The 4th tower. The task is complete, as the man swung his sword to slay the flesh golem. At this moment, the golden radiance felt an incredibly complex mix of emotions. Fear, despair, anticipation, and longing. All these emotions intertwined with one another, and ultimately formed a sense of respect. It was the first time in his life he had ever felt this way. That man is destined to become a top player in the future, and he wanted to document everything about that man. At the same time, the man swiftly moved and appeared right in front of them. From this moment on, his connection with Mazid began. While the other teams stood there in terror, they were taken down by the monster in a single blow. In no time, the only ones left in the entire competition arena were the man and his group. It seems like this mission's rewards are pretty great. Both the experience points and GP received a triple bonus. The man then expressed to Maxid, "Let's have a conversation again when we have time," because the man wanted to tell him something about talents. But he looked completely confused. Still, the man only mentioned that it was related to magic. The details could wait until there was an opportunity to discuss later. Is he suggesting I should change my profession to a mage? If it were someone else, maybe he wouldn't give it much thought. But Sheng Jihan demonstrated an incredibly powerful strength. Maybe there's a career that's just right for him. The two then agreed to have a more detailed conversation when there's a chance. Although the Golden Light also expressed interest in joining them, it was turned down by the man. Right after that, he turned and left the place. The scene shifts. The man received the mission reward and got the next mission hint. Bonus mission. The trail of the disciple will be revealed in the Silver League. Even though the crystal fragments were obtained, this still left the man feeling deeply disappointed. The sacred blessing within the crystal is an advanced skill that only saints can use. It has the ability to boost all capabilities by 50%. This is a skill that's essential for top-tier leagues. But this thing is only allowed in competitions below the Silver League. At the same time, at this moment, his level has already reached 13. Even though he's still about 12 levels away from competing in the Silver League, he still needs to level up by around 12 more levels. Right now, his stats are already unmatched by anyone. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the holy sword beside him began to resonate. Right after that, divine power started to gather slowly within the man. Strangely enough, the man's own attributes did not improve. At that moment, the sacred sword issued a warning that it couldn't handle the injected power. The device was about to be destroyed. It seemed like the 3 energy streams that had just been injected were already out of control. And to prevent even worse consequences, the man had to absorb this energy back into his body. Meanwhile, Takeda Kazuo was complaining that the plan had failed again, and he was the one who had issued the mission on behalf of the Sword King family, 898. He had originally planned to take this opportunity to see the status window related to the man, but unfortunately, he didn't succeed. It would have been great if he could succeed on the first try. It seems like he needs to keep a low profile for a while. Although Kazuo Takeda was aware that the man was an exceptional talent, his superior was someone who relied on facts before making decisions. So he wanted to recruit him. Kazuo Takeda has to access the state window of the man and use the information provided by the window to prove his worth. It seems like it's time to use some special methods, just like how they handled the Sword King. Even though they received a payment of 5 billion, they could only drive an old, beat-up car to school. and this even caused trouble for them. They ended up getting into some problems because of it. Right after the energy went out of control, the man decisively chose to absorb it. After a moment of effort, it was only at this point that the man managed to stabilize the energy. At the same time, a notification appeared ahead indicating an increase in combat power by 1 point. Now his combat power value had already reached 18. And just at that moment, because his combat power value exceeded 17. So from that point onward, the man, divine power can only be drawn from relics ranked A or higher. This is really just too much. After all, A-ranked relics are incredibly valuable. It seems there's no hope of enhancing divine power anytime soon. Just as the man was thinking this, Seoyin mentioned that he had already received a payment of 5 billion. But why do you look like this? Even though he claimed that nothing had happened, Seoyin didn't believe his explanation. She then insisted on treating his wounds. There's really nothing we can do about it. The scene shifts. The two of them went to a barbecue restaurant to have dinner together. This was the first proper meal the man had since returning. In Se-yun's opinion, the two of them should at least share a meal together, because he's about to return to school. After all, as the student council president, taking breaks too often would leave a bad impression. It wouldn't look good, and the day to receive his talent was drawing near. It was only then that he remembered. August 22nd marked Yoon Se-ah's 18th birthday. It was also the moment he would receive blessings and gain his talent, even though he hoped to gain a decent talent, so he could turn around those terrible situations. In the end, all he got was an F-grade talent. At that moment, Yoon Se-ah, who had been strong for so long, finally broke down. If he were told this directly, he is bound to feel deeply disappointed. So men can only gradually lower their expectations. Isn't it just about going back to school starting tomorrow? Shia affirmed this. Then, starting from tomorrow, he planned to drive and escort Sia. Although Sia felt a bit puzzled by her uncle's actions, she couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. In the end, she agreed to it anyway. The scene transitions to another moment. At this moment, the two stood frozen in place, because the underground parking lot was completely empty. There used to be so many supercars parked here, but now they were nowhere to be seen. And then they suddenly remembered. Could it be that those cars were taken care of by them? Just as the two were at a loss, a rundown little car nearby caught the man's attention. It turned out to be Sia's mother's car, so those people had no right to do anything with it. The man immediately started the car. Even though this car is a bit old, it still seems to be in usable condition. A short while later, they arrived at the BattleNet Academy, and at that moment, they saw a big guy who was furiously yelling at them. Move the car right now. Even though the man was aware, this beat-up car is bound to grab people's attention, but he never expected it to happen so quickly. He then slowly stepped out of the car. Mind your words and watch your tone. He is also the student's guardian. At that very moment, the two people nearby noticed. The person standing before them was actually Shang Jihan. They took a photo of him and posted it online. In an instant, it sparked heated discussions among netizens. On the other side, Li Haiyan gave instructions to Li Jiaying. They are heading to the BattleNet Academy. Then they started to dress up and get ready. After all, Shang Jihan had actually turned down his invitation last time. This time, he is determined to regain his pride. Just you wait, Shang Jihan. He only showed up at the competition venue, yet his presence sent a shiver down everyone's spine, because he had once single-handedly taken down a gold-level monster, and now appearing here. It's like a dimensional crush, just as the man and the big guy were about to clash. The next moment, he threw a punch straight toward the man. At this moment, everyone showed a look of complete shock, because the massive fist actually stopped right in front of the man's nose. Originally, he thought about struggling, but he realized he couldn't even open his mouth. The man raised his hand with a swift motion. Right after that, he went straight to the ground. Immediately after, he began scolding him. As a family member of a student, behaving so rudely is unacceptable. Even if you can't set a good example, you should at least avoid showing such rude behavior. At that moment, a voice from the side called out to Yoon Se-ah, and it turned out to be Se-ah's classmate, Kim Hee-ju. They seemed to have a pretty good relationship, but when he saw that Shia was riding in such a run-down little car, He immediately stated on the spot that he would personally pick her up and take her home after school. At that moment, the man seemed a little puzzled. Does Xia really have such a close friend? It felt somewhat strange to him. A moment later, when Li Haiyan and the others arrived here, they found that Shang Jihan had already left and was no longer there. At this moment, he was ranting and expressing his dissatisfaction because he was worried that Shang Jihan might join another guild. Meanwhile, suddenly, a scene appeared ahead. It was a live broadcast of Shang Jihan competing in a match, and he came up with an idea instantly. From now on, he decided to keep a close watch on him. The scene shifted. At this moment, Shang Jihan had already clenched his right fist tightly. The very next second, he threw a punch that sent the enemy in front of him flying on the spot. Afterward, he followed up with a swift kick from his right leg. Then he slowly began to gather energy. En une amide divine technique, the heavenly thunder footwork. In the blink of an eye, a streak of lightning shot through the crowd. In an instant, the man wiped out all the enemies present. It seemed he was getting better at controlling this power. At that moment, two people nearby suddenly started a discussion. Isn't that Shang Jihan? They say in the Bronze League. He single-handedly defeated a gold-level meat demon. Running into someone like this in the Bronze League feels like a bolt from the blue. Accompanied by the announcement of the match's end, the man claimed first place once again at this moment, and because he has taken first place 5 times in a row. As a result, his experience points and GP increased by 200%, and since he has already reached level 15, the dungeon in the game has now been unlocked. This is absolutely amazing. I didn't expect the dungeon to unlock this quickly. Dungeons become available after reaching level 15. In there, you not only have to fight, but also deal with traps, mazes, and puzzles. However, there's only so much one person can do. So, dungeons are typically best tackled with teamwork and collaboration. But right now, too many people have their eyes on him. If the team targets him after entering the dungeon, it would spell big trouble. That would be a real mess. Even though he has a slight inclination to join a guild, after thinking it through, he decided against it, since leaving the guild later would be much harder. All he can do now is to wait. At present, waiting is the only option he has. When he reached the silver rank, he planned to establish his own guild. He caught a whiff of a scent that felt familiar, but he was ready to stake his entire life on it, because he firmly believed that Li Haiyan was 0, and the man needed to verify something, whether his talent had undergone any changes. Right after wrapping up the Bronze League, he was having breakfast with Yun Xia at that moment. But what Xia didn't expect was, my uncle's cooking skills are exceptional. It's all thanks to the fact that he used to cook every single day. But speaking of which, are you planning to take your friend's car home from now on? However, Xia gave a negative response to this, because he was overly enthusiastic. It made Xia feel a little uncomfortable. After all, from the moment she got in the car, he started asking about Xia's recent situation. That sounded a bit unpleasant. What's more, there's another thing to consider. Sure, you found her mom's small car to be incredibly cozy. Of course, even the man felt the same way. The scene shifts. The man drove back to the Battle Network Academy again. But what he hadn't expected was, Li Haiyan and the others had already been waiting there for quite a while, although their expressions seemed a bit serious. When he asked why they were there, he explained that he had arrived ahead of time. Meanwhile, Xia was being very perceptive. She quickly said she needed to go to school. So, is it possible to spare a little time now? Shang Jihan paused for a moment. The two of them stepped outside, though there were quite a few people watching around them. The man seemed a bit uncomfortable with it. Then, Li Haiyan got straight to the point. Shang Jihan was the first man he had to chase after. So, he came up with a pretty good plan for him. Platinum-level contract. Hearing this, the people around instantly felt that their guild didn't stand a chance, because he played his trump card right away. Even the man found it hard to believe. No one expected him to be so prepared. The reason he proposed this plan was to show how much he cared for Shang Jihan. Hearing this, Li Jiaying immediately understood everything. This was all part of his plan, whether it's to deal with other guilds, or to take down Shang Jihan. And at this moment, the man now appeared utterly shocked. because the sin on him was exactly the same as Zero's. At this point, he finally confirmed that Li Haiyan was Zero, but he couldn't help feeling curious, wondering if his talents had been affected, and suddenly, he remembered at that moment that he couldn't keep giving without expecting anything in return. So she went ahead and asked the man for his number, but he responded to this instead. How about making a bet? Because at this point, he had already reached level 15. His first dungeon run was going to be the underground labyrinth. At this moment, both of them looked completely stunned. They didn't expect him to unlock the dungeon so quickly. So what exactly is the wager? What could the bet possibly be? If he couldn't achieve the top score in the dungeon, then he would join the Divergent Union and would.